Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bolt Report. I am Michael Wax, joined as always with my co-host Jake Ricker. Jake, hockey season is finally here after months of waiting, after months of rookie showcases and preseason games, the longest preseason schedule in the history of the NHL. It felt like we are back and we are here with our season preview. How you doing?
We're a spoiled fan base when this has felt like the longest offseason we've ever had because we've been winning so much and playing so long into the postseason. But I am thrilled to have hockey back, kicking things off against the Nashville Predators, the first game of the NHL season, which is kind of exciting as well. So I'm looking forward to getting this year going because some people are sleeping on us, Michael. And I think we still got a really good team to play this year.
Absolutely. And guys, if you want to watch that first game, be sure to remember that it is 5:30. It's an early start time, and it's going to be nationally televised on ESPN. So it's a very, very crucial game. The Lightning's first game of the season. And Jake, with our first topic, it is the first game without Andre Vasilevskiy in the regular season. He's going to be out 8 to 10 weeks with a back disc herniation, which I got to say sounds extremely painful. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, especially the Lightning's most valuable player. But we saw a lot of good things out of the goaltenders here in the preseason, whether it was Jonas Johansson, whether it was Matt Tompkins. I believe Jonas Johansson stopped 96 of 98 shots. Matt Tompkins had a couple of really good games, although the numbers didn't really back him up on a couple of those occasions. What are you looking for in the goaltending this year until Vasilevskiy comes back?
Well, let's start with Johansson because he's going to be the starter for the Lightning in Vasi's absence. And listen, nobody can be Andre Vasilevskiy. He's the best goaltender in the NHL. So I'm not expecting him to go out there and make these unbelievable stops and, win. Vasi's going to be for about 20 games when I counted up. That 20 games is about 2 months. I'm not expecting him to go out there to win 18 games. I think it's unrealistic.
That'd
But
be
I would
pretty
love
nice.
it. But it's not going to happen. So I think at minimum, you'd like to see, them kind of be like a 500 range. That's on the low end. If they can be a little bit above that, I think that's ideal. But I'll tell you what, Michael, from what I've seen in the preseason, I'm not too concerned. I'm really not. I know there's some rumors out there that we might go and pick up Martin Jones right now as another potential backup. But from what I've seen from both Johansson and Tompkins, I think they've looked good. I mean, Johansson has a goals against average in 3 games of the preseason of 0.67. And one of the goals wasn't even really his fault. One of them he'd like to have back, and he probably stops that, 99 times out of 100. But Johansson has looked fantastic. So there's not much concern for me. I know it's only preseason. You can't judge everything. But from what we have to judge on, what we've seen from them so far, I don't think there's any reason to be too overly concerned. Again, don't get me wrong. It's not Vasilevskiy, but things are looking up a lot better than you think they would be without Andre Vasilevskiy.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, when the Lightning signed Johansson and when I was looking at his numbers and looking at his tape, I was quite concerned. Like, this was a guy that
Fair
really
enough.
struggled with his lateral movement. He was someone that wasn't really utilizing his size. Look at like his numbers with Florida and Buffalo and a little bit with Colorado. And I was just like appalled that the Lightning signed him. And then, of course, to compound with the Vasi news, I was like, all right, like, I guess if we can go 500, that would be fantastic. But he just looked fantastic in the preseason. You talk about like a 42 save shutout against one of the best teams. Some are calling one of the best teams in the league this year in Carolina. They were playing their top three lines in that game. It was mostly like an NHL game. And one of the main complaints that I've had during the preseason, which we'll get into when we talk about the defensive depth, is how many shots they allowed during the preseason. But the Lightning goaltenders really did their job when it came to minimizing the damage. I think that's huge.
Yeah, no question about it. And the numbers don't even tell the whole story. I mean, Johansson has great numbers. Tompkins, as you mentioned, doesn't have great. He's had 11 goals against, but a lot of them were not on him whatsoever. He made some big saves when he needed to. Now, I don't think Tompkins is a backup goaltender right now. He's probably could use another year in the AHL or something like that. But to be a potential backup for a couple of games while Vasi's out, I think he could be very serviceable. And they've got a great opportunity to be a big help for the Lightning when a lot of people are going to be down on them without Vasilevskiy.
Absolutely. And going for the goaltending side of things to something that I had mentioned a little bit earlier, the defense has been allowing a decent amount of shots, to say the least, in the preseason. And I would say that overall, besides the injury to the most important player, this is the biggest question mark for sure. We've got a lot of young players on this team. Mikhail Sergachev is still only 25 years old. Nick Turbix has only been in the league for one season. Same thing with Darren Radish, who's been in the league for less time. We've seen Zach Bogosian go on waivers today as we're recording this. Is there a concern to the defense right now or is it a matter of just gelling together?
So there's a couple ways to look at this, right? Again, as I mentioned, even with the goaltenders on the positive side, it is just preseason. You have to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, look at Nemestikov from last year. He had almost 4 goals in the preseason. And we thought, holy cow, this is the old Nemestikov. He's going to be amazing this year. And then he got traded midway through the season and was not playing well whatsoever.
Did not need you to bring that up.
Well, I mean, hey, it's the truth. That's what we saw in the preseason, and people, including myself, were excited about it. And it didn't translate. So the preseason doesn't mean everything. You have to take these stats with a grain of salt. With that said, the defense hasn't looked good. I mean, there are a couple games like the one against Carolina. Usually when Tompkins was in the net, the defense just struggled. One of the goals against the Florida Panthers in their final preseason game, where Radish, the puck just kind of bounced over his stick. He could have stopped it and cleared that out, but it bounces right over, and Florida gets an easy pass in front of the slot to get a quick goal. So there's just been some little things that don't look great. We do have some new defenders. Well, in Calvin DeHaan, he's here now. It might take him a little bit of time to get used to the lineup, but most of these guys we've had before. These are not new guys. The defense kind of is the same for the most part. You still got Perbix, Hedman, Sergachev, Radish. So I wouldn't say that they need to gel. Maybe they need to get their feet under them a little bit, and that might take a couple of games in the regular season. But the defense is definitely something I'm keeping my eye on. And if the Lightning are going to make any kind of move at the deadline, this is looking way ahead, and we have literally no cap space. But if they were, that's the biggest need, I think, for them right now. Even with Vasilevskiy out of goaltender, I think defense is the biggest issue for the Bolts, potentially heading into the season.
Absolutely. And one thing that I'd like to see the Lightning take out of the Rays playbook was one thing that the Rays struggled with this season was relief pitching early in the season. And so throughout the year, they pieced together a new bullpen, which became a dominant bullpen by the end of the year. They didn't do it all during the trade deadline. I know you mentioned that Lightning could make a defensive acquisition during the deadline.
Be hard to do, but they could.
Be creative with it. You got guys in the system, whether it's Hayden Fleury, Philippe Myers. If you really believe in someone like a Declan Carlisle or a Jack Thompson, like let them thrive. Let them be who they are projected to be, even if they're a young player. I think that would be very cool.
And Myers is an interesting one to me as well. He's the one you got from Nashville in the McDonough trade, and you thought he was going to be in the starting lineup right away. He wasn't, ended up getting sent down to the AHL. And I believe, I don't have his stats put up in front of me, but he's been doing well down there. So that's a guy that could potentially help you out big time if the defense is struggling, if there's some kind of injury. So, we'll see how things play out, but the defense is definitely the spot I'm keeping my eye on for the start of the regular season.
When we talked about the defense, we mentioned depth, and another thing that has seen a full turnover has been the forward depth. So out goes Pat Maroon, Corey Perry, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, all gone. Alex Killorn was a little bit more than depth, but he's now gone. Ross Colton is now gone. And in their place, we have a lot of names that I don't think a lot of people are familiar with. Austin Watson is currently on a PTO and might get signed by the time this video goes up. That really depends on whether or not the Lightning want to make us wait on that. ABB, Alex Barry-Boulet, is a name that people are familiar with. He has apparently secured his roster spot, as has Valtteri Mirala, who has very much impressed during the preseason and earlier in the rookie showcase. Jake, this is a very new depth defensive line. A, how do you think they're going to mesh? And B, what kind of different style of play are we looking at?
Well, it's funny. All three of those guys that you mentioned are kind of different style players, right? Watson, who I think is going to get a contract, we'll see. Once Vassy going to go on LTIR, I expect him to put him on LTIR, and then things change again when he comes back. But Watson's kind of big body, physical, almost just kind of goon kind of guy down there. He's not huge offensively, but he is not afraid to throw the body and stand up for your teammates and get physical when you need it. And sometimes that's one area the Lightning don't have a ton of until they got Tanner Jeannot, of course. He's been that guy for them. But he's a physical guy. And you look at ABB, who Lightning fans know has never been able to translate his success from the AHL to the NHL. He's an offensive guy, and he can score and he can mix it on the power play potentially, but a guy that hasn't found too much success. And then Morella is the one I'm probably excited about most, and I apologize, I've still not gotten his name down just quite yet. But he's a kind of all-around player. It seems like he can kind of do a little bit of everything. That's what John Cooper was saying about him when asked about his performance after that last preseason game. I think he's a guy with the best potential for the Lightning. Cap space gets a little bit harder with him, of course, because the Lightning just don't have. We need that cap jump bad, Michael. We need it. It would help us out so much. But I think he's the player I like the most because he's just well-rounded and it seems like he's really putting in 110% effort. But it does seem like ABB is going to be that guy, even with Vassy back, assuming he continues to play, at least decent. And can contribute on that power play and that offensive upside that he does have.
As we get to the last segment, I'm going to bring Mirala up again, but I do think that whether they play on line together or they're interspersed between playing on the third and the fourth line, I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic between guys like Mirala, ABB, Watson, even someone like Mikey Eyssimont, who they got last year, played very well, surprised a lot of people, and has done some things in the preseason. I'm going to be honest, I've never seen before. So I'm very interested to see what he does. As we get into whether it's game 1 or game 20, is there a particular line combination that you want to see?
Listen, I trust Cooper when it comes to line combinations. There's a reason I am not an NHL head coach. I'll tell you what I'm excited about, and it's I believe Sherry played with Eyssimont. I think it was Sherry, Eyssimont, and Sorelli. I think it was. That line looked pretty darn good. Connor Sherry is a guy that I'm very excited about for the Lightning this year, so I'm excited to see what they can do. Eyssimont just has that kind of a Gord-like effort out of him where he's just running up and down the ice constantly. Maybe not as good defensively as Gord was, but, similar kind of efforts, if you will. So probably that line is the one that I'm most looking forward to. I don't know if these things will change, because Cooper has a tendency to move these lines when things aren't working as well. I mean, sometimes you see Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point together, and then sometimes he's got them on 3 separate lines. So I don't know how it'll be as we get into the season, but that's one I think I'm looking forward to most. And then there's the new 4th line guys. I mean, we talked about some of the, if ABB, Morella, or Watson are going to be in the lineup. You probably see one of those guys, but Luke Glendening, Tyler Mott, Brown's not going to be with us for the start of the season because he's injured, but those new guys that we acquired in the offseason and free agency, I'm excited for them. Mott and Glendening, I think, have both played well and can play some big time 4th line minutes for the Lightning this season.
Yeah, when watching the preseason, sometimes you look at someone like Luke Glendening, you're like, man, he's been in the defensive zone a lot. And then you see he's actually won like 8 of his 11 faceoffs.
Great face-off guy.
They need a guy like that. And Pierre-Edouard Bellemare in 2022 was that. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare in 2023 took a step back. So I think it's good that they went out and got somebody like that. Very important. As far as like lines, I'm always line juggling on Cap Friendly. I'm always trying to see what a nice combination might be. I gotta say, like AC Mont, Sorelli, Shiri was a great line during the preseason. AC Mont, Sorelli, Stamkos might be the one. Like it might not have the forward checking that the first option did, like the one that we actually saw during the preseason. But as far as Sorelli just being the defensively responsible one and letting the other two just kind of do their thing, I kind of want to see that. I'm not gonna lie. Like I think when we put our lines together, we want to see ones that score a lot of goals. And Cooper is very much okay. We want to put lines together that are as defensively responsible as they can be. So I'm interested to see how Cooper juggles his lines this year when things don't go right, because they inevitably won't go right. But as we go and finish this video and our season preview, Jake, when we had RVLR on for our season preview last year, I believe you were the only one to get your preseason hot take correct. Brandon Hagel, 30 goals. I unfortunately had, I believe it was Ross Colton, 20 goals. He missed out narrowly and he's no longer with the team. But because you are the soothsayer, we need you to bring us another bold prediction.
Need some more good. Hey, I would love to go 2 for 2 in bold predictions. I don't know if I'll hit it again, but because I'll constantly remind people about the Hagel prediction because it worked out so nicely. But the guy that I got my eye on, and I already mentioned him earlier in the show, is Connor Sherry. I am really excited about him. I thought he was a great signing. He knows how to play with superstar players. He's played with Ovechkin. He's played with Crosby. Played with Crosby more than he did Ovechkin, but he's a guy that can score goals and set up guys because he knows how to play with these top tier players, which the Lightning have a lot of. I don't know if he'll play with Stamkos or Kucherov or Point at any point. He wasn't in the preseason. But again, as we kind of talked about just before, things can change, lines can change. So I'm going to go, I think Connor Sherry can have a 40-point season. I think he can get 20 goals, 20 assists. I don't know, maybe not crazy bold. He's kind of been a little bit more of he's getting older. So he hasn't hit that in a little bit, but I would love to see Connor Sherry go 20, we'll call it a 20 for 20 season, 20 goals, 20 assists for 40 points. I think he could maybe even do more than that if the stars align, but Connor Sherry is my player to watch this year for sure.
See, that seems tame until you look at the type of player that Connor Sherry is. I love that prediction. That's fantastic. It would be very funny if he does hit 20 in one and then not hit 20 in another, but still hits the 40-point plateau. So you've got 20, 20, and 40. That's your bold prediction for Connor Sherry.
At least 40 points. Let's go. I'm thinking around 20 for 20, but 40 points is the actual prediction. If he can get 40 or more, I'll be extremely happy.
If he hits it, you should take credit for all three.
Yeah, fair enough. I will.
And if he doesn't, you just say, oh, I said 40 points. For me, I actually put this take out on Twitter when Lightning Review asked for hot takes during the season. I said, not only will Vasilevskiy Mirala make the roster, but he will be in the top 7 for goals this year, which is an interesting take when you consider the amount of firepower that we have. So it was bold to say that he was going to make the team because it wasn't official at the time. So I got that one right. I'm very happy about that. But the 7th overall last year, I believe, had 16 goals. So basically, he's going to be around that 16 to 20 range. I know I predicted Colton for 20 last year, and he ended up getting somewhere in the teens. But I really do like the type of player that Mirala has shown to be, both in the rookie showcase and in preseason. A lot of people were enamored by that goal against Nashville, where he absolutely bodied the defender and then scored on the rush. But he can do everything in the offensive zone. He can assist. He has a very good shot. Like, he can play along the boards. He's not afraid to get feisty. He's a player that I'm very excited for. And I'm definitely going to throw my hands up and say, let's be all about this player. And I've been here since day one. So I'm very nervous about this pick because I want it to go right. And I think if it does, the Lightning have a ton more options as far as line juggling and forward depth is concerned. And then if it doesn't, like the Vlad situation, who knows what you're looking at. But
sticking with prospects real quickly too. I don't know if he's going to be. I don't think he'll make the lineup this year unless something crazy happens. But another prospect to watch in the future, Maxim Groshev. He's been so good. He's already scoring goals for the Crunch. I really like him a lot. He's the guy I will definitely have on this hot take segment eventually when he does make the NHL lineup. But look out for him to be one of those prospects where people go, "Where did this guy come from? How did the him?" Because I'm excited for Groshev.
Grosjean was one of those guys. Apparently, a lot of guys were training in Tampa. He was one of those guys. He was the only non-main roster guy to be training there with Kucherov. And of course, during the showcase, during the preseason, a lot of people said, "This guy looks like Kucherov." And so,
I wonder why.
if we could get another Kucherov, that would be absolutely fantastic. But Jake, any other last-minute predictions or comments before we wrap this season preview up?
I'm excited for the season. I'm ready to get things going here. I know if you look at a lot of the expert predictions, they've got us, a lot of people have us missing the playoffs. I am nowhere close to being on board with that. I think the Lightning are going to have another great year. Yes, on paper, they're maybe not as strong as they used to be, but I think a lot of the new pieces, Tyler Mott, Luke Glendening, Connor Sherry, even some of the new younger guys, E.C. Mott, maybe even ABB, who knows, maybe he finally does it this year. I think the Lightning are still going to be one of the top teams in the NHL. Are they going to be in first in the division? No, probably not. I mean, they don't have Vasilevskiy for 2 months, but I think the Lightning are going to easily make the playoffs and have another great chance at making another cup run this year.
Absolutely. I definitely hope that they make the playoffs. That would be great. But
Of course.
finishing top 3 in that division should always be the goal. I think that we've learned in recent years that regular season success doesn't really mean anything.
Just make the playoffs.
Just make the playoffs, see what happens, be healthy. That's all that really matters. But guys, thank you so much for watching our season preview for the 2023-2024 Lightning season. I have been Michael X with my co-host, as always, Jake Ricker. If you like this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for all of our Lightning content that we're going to put out. We got a lot more content coming out when the season starts. Maybe the day that you're watching this, we've got some content coming out on the page as well. And as always, follow us on Twitter at BoltReport_TV for your news, notes, and game recaps. And go Bolts.
Go Bolts.